Hi, I'm Jen Hurd, and welcome to the Thrive Through Life Change event, where we're going to learn how to regain powerful energy, create an inspiring vision, and a balanced life in spite of everything going on in the world around us today. I'm a professional organizer and have been for many years, and over the course of years, I've worked with them who really got stuck and didn't come through very successfully. So I decided that I was going to look for experts out in the world and create a forum for us to learn more about how to thrive through life changes. And so without any further ado, I want to introduce my guest today, Theresa Vigarino. And Theresa has a fascinating background. I'm excited to talk to you. I want to tell the audience just a little bit about you. So Theresa is the founder and CEO of Mom's House for Children. And she'll tell us a little bit about that in a minute. She's a soul essence alchemist, a yoga teacher, author, and speaker. So she has a very diverse set of interests. She has a really unique combination that she uses between neuroscience and emotional trauma release, and also activation of Christ consciousness as a clear conscious channel. So she weaves all of that into her work with her clients and does interpersonal work with them. And it's called, what she calls it is soul essence alchemy. So she's a lifelong healer and has spent over 30 years cultivating, seeking, learning, and experiencing as a conduit of healing for other people. So this is where her heart is.
Thank you.
She lives it every day. Excuse my papers. I'm trying to stash them.
I do my best. I do my best. And right now, the world needs all of us to stand up and help each other out in this way.
I know.
So thank you for putting this together. I'm excited to get to know the other speakers and see the information that they have to give too, because we're all students and we're all teachers all the time.
Yeah, I know. It's a great group of people. It's been absolutely fascinating, and it's just been really a thrill to dig into this subject because I get called into it a lot with clients, but they're always in a life change of some sort, or it threw them into the mess that they're in, right?
Yes,
and so a big part of my work is figuring out a path out of that. And some of it's the emotional work, some of it's the stuff work, and a lot of it's really tied together. So, I mean, when I started this business in 2006, I took a lot of psychology classes. I realized real quick that this was not just about cleaning up people's stuff. It was about cleaning up stuff.
Yes, it was a deep excavation, right? I'm sure at times.
Oh,
Changing patterns of behavior is very deep work.
It
Even
is.
if it's organizing at your home or a filing system or a business, it's still deep work. Mm-hmm. Because what is going on the outside is truly what's going on the inside. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure nobody knows that better than you.
Yeah, no, it's so true. I mean, and just depending on how you were raised too, some of it's generational where you're continuing a pattern that's even longer than just you.
Yes, absolutely.
And if that's the case, it can be a long way out, so there's people I've worked with between, 6 months and 6 years. I mean, it could be a long time, but it's amazing to watch the change of the whole situation.
Yeah.
So you have a very interesting job. This is what I want to talk to you about, speaking of jobs. Soul Essence Alchemist. So describe a little bit for our audience how you came to be involved in this sort of work.
Well, I first began with transformational life coaching, which has been wonderful, and I loved it for a long time. But ultimately, more techniques and a deeper spiritual component arrived through me, and I went on a deep dive. I mean, that was a parallel part of my life.
Yeah.
Since I was a little girl, I was able to see into the spirit realm. I could see angels as a little girl. I could talk to them. So I always had that connection to the other side of the veil, as we call it. Right. And so weaving that in came after actually a really bad sickness where I was literally on the bed, couldn't move. I had just moved here to Northern California from Lake Tahoe. So I didn't know anyone, and my husband was out of town. I was in an adrenal crisis. I had pneumonia. I had kidney infections. I had so many things with this autoimmune disease that I have that most people probably would have called 911 and gone to the hospital. I'm like, I can hold on a little bit longer. And I had a coming to Jesus moment, literally, where we had this conversation, and I was really ready to go because I'd had this lifelong illness. And I was really suffering at that point in the physical body. And I was like, just rid me of the body. That was where I was that night. And immediately when I said that, I saw a flash of my husband. We had just been married 3 months, and my 2 children, and then all these other people I didn't know. And the question to me was, really, are you sure you have free will? Do you really want to leave now your life and here on earth? And I was like, no, of course not. After that night, I started getting better. And I was working with my life coaching clients, and I would hear, he always speaks to me in my right ear, pray for them. So, these are business people, sometimes politicians, and I'd say, can I pray for you? And I just listened and did it. And 100% of the time, I've yet to come across someone that says, no, don't, which is beautiful. So I would pray, and there would be literally sometimes instant miracles. Like right then, people with Crohn's or some other migraines or some other physical ailment. And this kind of went on for a while, and I'd hang up and I'd call my husband. I'd say, oh my gosh, you're not going to believe what happened. And all of this feedback kept coming. Like, I needed the money and it came in 2 days, or it was extraordinary. And I realized at that moment that I needed to open up to having more of that. And where I give people the messages that I hear, for them or that I see. And so it really became about the mind, the emotional body, the physical body, and the spirit. And so it became more of a holistic healing sessions is what they became ultimately. And so that was given to me, that title, from one of my mentors, Soul Essence Alchemist, because the soul makes up it all.
Yeah. Yeah,
and
that's the core.
That's how it happened. And the alchemy part is, taking the essence of all the pieces of ourselves and, taking a metal, right, and turning it to gold. So no matter what it is, it can, no matter what your experience has been, no matter what you've been through, it can turn to gold. Yeah.
See, and that's I love in this world today, some people have just got the title that is, it's their thing. Like it's exactly suited.
It was totally given to her from, believe it or not, Archangel Michael, in a phone conference, in a Zoom. And literally I was like, what the heck does that mean? I mean, I didn't even know what it was at the time. It's a few years ago now.
Yeah.
And now people are coming. At first people were like, what is, they were like this with it. Now people are very intrigued by it. Yeah. And I'm not smart enough to have come up with that on my own.
It had to be given.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I'm very familiar with those kind of situations, kind of just having that show up, that whatever it is, it just shows up and you're like, oh, there it is.
Yes, exactly. So I just ran with it, and that's how it happened.
Yeah, no, I get it. Man, do I get that. So interesting. So part of what I want to do to help the audience out, with the people viewing us today, they're going through these, who knows with COVID, they could be catastrophic life changes, loss of a person or loss of a job there's a lot going on right now. Mm-hmm. So as people are running up against these things that are colliding with them and pushing them around, and they feel sort of embattled, right? I want them to understand there's other modalities, available to them and have access to those sorts of things. So in terms of your methodology, like when you're helping someone tune in and sort of figure out what their new purpose is, or what their purpose may have always been, but they didn't recognize because they were busy.
Yes.
Right? And maybe now they're not. So how do you work through that with someone? What's your sort of process with that?
Well, what a perfect time for this. I mean, it's the great pause is what spiritual circles are calling it. Yeah. And the difference between what I first tell people is what happens when you think you should be doing something, and maybe you're very good at it and you've invested a lot of your life in it. So sometimes that's hard to let go of because your identity is wrapped up in it. Fear of the unknown, the brain is triggering the amygdala going, don't change a thing because we're doing this. But there's this ache that wants to, there's an emergence, just, like the baby bird pecking on the inside of the shell, just trying to break through in your life. If you have that nudging, then there is something for you to follow. And there's an excavation that can happen. And what happens when you're in the alignment with what your soul is calling for you to do? is the difference between pushing a rock uphill, right? Pushing, it's the difference between motivation and inspiration. I got to get up and motivate myself to go to this job or whatever. And you have to force yourself sometimes, where when you're inspired, it's your soul's calling and it pulls you. You couldn't stop doing it if you tried.
Right.
It's just your mind is on it. Doors open. I mean, this nonprofit I've started, I cannot tell you, this has been a dream of mine since I was 8 years old. I cannot tell you the doors that have opened and the opportunities that have happened and the blessings that are pouring into my husband's and my life that like we wouldn't have even expected. That I know is because we are following that soul calling. And it is an important time for all of us, because I promise you, if more of us were living from our soul calling, we'd be happier people, first of all.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
We'd be joyful. Right. And that spreads, by the way. It's contagious.
That's kind of contagion.
That's actually the one good contagion, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, we need a little more of that contagion right now to combat the other.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Well, and speaking of that a little bit, you said something in an earlier conversation we had, which I loved, and I wanted to get back to it for the audience because I think they'll enjoy this. And a number of my other guests, interestingly, has said a similar thing.
Yeah.
But I like where you were coming from with it. You were talking about suffering is the greatest teacher. And I wanted to expand that a little bit for people because I'm not saying, hey, let's all suffer. That's not what I mean. But there's a lot to it. And I know because I've seen it.
Yeah.
And what it can create, the pressure that makes a diamond, it's like there's something in it.
The piece of metal that is forged in the fire and then hammered and hammered and hammered and back in the fire and hammered and hammered. And then, all of the polishing before the sword is finally made into this beautiful, beautiful piece of art, really. Same with the diamond, right? Even when it's been that pressure from that carbon and the diamond emerges, it takes that. It really does, because it is in those moments, like that moment that I had with Christ consciousness. It takes those moments where you think, oh my God, where we literally give up. Because in that moment when we give up, that's really the ego that's giving up. And in that moment, you have access to the supra-conscious, the highest level of consciousness. When you're really in those moments of like you tied a knot at the end of the rope and you're holding on to your life. Those are the moments that really become a touchstone, because usually what happens is, like I did, years ago now, I said, by God, that's it. I'm not going to go down like this. This is not going to be my legacy. I'm going to have the life I want, or by God, I'm going to die trying. So it's a very powerful place to be in the suffering. Actually, the great sages and the great tribal leaders and traditional healers, I'm now involved very heavily in South American shamanism with a certain tribe, the Shipibo tribe in the Amazon. Traditional healers, they know like to walk the path of that. You're walking in the in-between of suffering and healing, and how you manage both. We all have suffering.
Yeah.
We all have hurt. Now, Buddha said, that there's pain in life, but suffering is our choice. As you know, you've heard that before. Yes. So at some point you can go through, some chronic kidney stones.
Yeah. Right.
You don't have to go there in your mind, woe is me, or feeling sorry for yourself, or the sky's falling on my head right now.
Yeah, you don't have to throw yourself on the rocks.
Right. And even if it's financial, even if it's in relationship, even if it's just, you're not happy with your life, there's like I keep saying, there's a digging that needs to happen here. And the only way that we will do that as human beings sometimes is if we're forced into it. And typically that is what we will be like, no, I don't want to feel like that again. I don't want to go through like that again. I'm going to figure out why I keep attracting that to myself, and that's it. And so then we actually can take our power back from patterns, from ways of being, and we can go through the work so that we can create the change, and we are the great creator of our life experience. We're not victims to our life. We are creative beings that are here to create what we want to experience.
I wish more people would take that to heart.
Yeah.
You know, that life just doesn't happen to you. You are creating it actively in your response to things, in how you step into things, and what you choose to enter into with the people around you. You know, all of that is a creative endeavor.
Yes.
And I don't think people
100%.
perceive it that way, but I think it is. And
Most people believe that there's, big white haired, white bearded man in the sky that says you're blessed and you're not. I'm going to let you have this because I love you more and you've been bad. I mean, like there's an arbitrator in the sky that decides who gets what. And really, we've been taught so wrong for thousands of years that, we are victims to our life experience and life happens to us. No, 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 no. Life happens through us and for us. Ultimately, everything we experience, depending on how we look at it and how our perception, that everything, and I can go through hours of trauma of what my life has been like. I mean, some of the things I've been through, and I can look at it all and go, I am so grateful for everything I've been through. And I know that sounds, like a platitude and a cliche, but truly you come to a point in your spiritual development and in your emotional healing and healing of the mind where you can say, wow, this all, pushed me down this path to the now. And I'm so grateful because I have a big, deep well I can draw from and relate to other people because of those experiences.
Exactly. And that's, I mean, people tell me that all the time, but part of it is because I'm in other people's experiences with other people on top of having my own experiences. So I have a really deep well.
Yes.
Because I'm looking at all of these things and how did they sort that out? And how did you figure this out? And, sharing it one to another. Confidentially, obviously, but you know what I'm saying? Like all those best practices and things that people figured out, I store and then I, use. And so all of those things, almost like being a conduit, and it can be exhausting in a way, but also like incredibly, if you have the mindset that you're helping people work their miracles, in their situations, it's so life-giving. And I swear it keeps me young, and because I think I aged the most in my life in the 3 months where I wasn't out doing it. Like with this shutdown, I was just like, just because so much energy was flowing all the time.
I think a lot of people have felt this way, actually. A lot of people feel tired. A lot of people feel depleted, even if they have not been ill. I know a lot of people that have been very, very sick, even not with COVID, right? So it's really interesting as an energy worker and healer and teacher to bear witness to, like, and I work with people, like, I think we're in 50 countries now, but to talk to my regional directors in Africa and what's going on there and what's going on in the Amazon and other parts of the world. It's quite fascinating how so many people are feeling similar things.
Yeah. Well, stopping the flow.
Yeah.
Stopping the flow like that halting is really, I don't know if I want to use the word injurious, but it's definitely a really strange place to be when
it really is.
Used to being in that mode all the time. But to find something else to do with it, if you can find a place to put it, I'll tell you, it does pull you back to yourself a bit. And now's
the time, as we were saying, like to do some of that deeper work of, now is the time to pick up your journal. Now is the time to do some spiritual study. Now is the time to play the piano every day. Now is the time to start painting rocks. Now is the time to garden again. Now is the time to play games with the kids. Because honestly, and what's from a spiritual perspective, this slowing down. And now some people are working more than ever. My sister in the ER nurse, she's working tons.
Yeah.
But for the majority of us that are not first responders or essential workers, many of us, and where I am, we're going back on lockdown again in Northern California. it's a time that you can do more enriching activities, things that you've wanted to do but never found the time to do because we were so busy. And I want to add that I want to go back a little bit about the energy that people are feeling.
Yeah.
I can.
Do it.
Because
Yeah.
our thoughts and our feelings don't just stay in this human suit. So you've got, 8 billion people on the planet scared, many, not everyone, scared out of their minds. There are people that are suffering so much during lockdown in other places, much worse than we have suffered in America. And not to minimize the suffering of Americans.
No, but I understand what you mean.
Yeah, there's food scarcity. It's way worse because I've got my finger on the pulse of it because of the regions that we're in with the nonprofit. And so because we're all energetic beings and these energies are floating around us, sometimes you could feel like, why am I so down and tired today? I was doing great. We're connected.
Yeah.
We're all connected. So work on your own vibration of clearing it, grounding it, and doing the things to lift your energy and spirit up, because that will affect other people too.
Yeah. You to push it back out. Yeah.
Yes.
Not just let it come at you.
Like
Not
what
just
you're doing.
I used to call that being getting slimed.
But our auric fields, I heard
Energetically.
a spiritual teacher of mine say this, and I believe it to be true, that each individual energetic field is really becoming much more clean and pristine with this solitary time that we have.
Yeah.
That was very interesting to me, and it's a very good thing. So
Yeah,
that's
that
the
is.
benefit of this. Yeah.
Yeah. So if people look at it as sort of like a purification a little bit, and take it that way, then maybe that's a way to shift mindset from the negativity, But speaking of mindset too, I know that I want to talk a bit about this with, you have something that you work on with your clients and in your realm of speaking, called a miraculous mindset.
Yes.
And the development of a miraculous mindset.
Yes.
And so part of that I want to, try to talk to our audience about is how we can help them find their balance and find that miraculous mindset in all of this as they're going through.
Perception is everything, right? But it's hard. It's hard to sometimes change how we see things, right? Because we're hardwired. And in the form, it's called neural pathways in our brain. And a belief system, it starts really early in life. But we create these belief systems based upon experiences, what we see, what we've seen, what we witnessed, what we heard, what we went through, what our parents went through, how we blamed ourselves, all of that, is stored in our heads. And we develop over time a belief system to go with that particular memory, such as, I'll give an example. Let's say there's a family and the mother and father get divorced. Kids blame themselves. And they think they must have done something. So they have the memory of that horrible trauma and that pain, plus the blame, so that eventually past 7, usually 0 to 7, it just goes in. After that, you start deducing, well, why did that happen? Why did I cause that? How did I, what does it mean? And typically it means you end up having a feeling associated with it very deep in the emotional body of not being good enough, not being worthy, not being deserving, not being lovable. And so those are, I've done this thousands and thousands of times. And when we know where we need to work on our life based on what's showing up and what's not. It's real simple. Like, if you want a relationship and you don't have one, okay, then you have a belief system in there. It's not rocket science, really, but it's hard. I'm telling you, the scariest and hardest thing to do is create a new wiring in the brain, because your brain wants you to travel down the same neural pathways, these networks that you always have. And when you try to change that, everything in your body and in your mind will, it's like trying to turn a freight train.
Yeah.
Or I always tell people it's like those cargo ships you see on the horizon, right? These big ships. And all of a sudden you're trying to change directions. I mean, imagine what's going on. The captain's calling down to the engineer and they got to do the rudders and everybody's running around and boxes are falling around, and it's creaking to create a new path.
Right.
And then after a certain point, it's smooth sailing. But during this turn, the network in the brain, oh, it tries to trick us up into going back to the old pathway. Oh my gosh, it'll use everything in its toolbox. And it's because it doesn't have a frame of reference for the thing that you want, because you haven't had it yet. And to this part of the brain, the amygdala specifically, this part of the brain wants you, even if it's you keep picking the alcoholic or the addict or the abuser or the one who is emotionally unavailable, or whatever the pattern is, you can trace it back to an early childhood experience always. The brain will want you, and so what will happen is, our subconscious mind is so smart, it'll draw in, we become magnets, draw in the perfect counterpart to your wound. So there it is again, although I used to do it. Oh my God, this is the one. This is just the best relationship ever, only to experience some of the same things again. And what I learned through my mentorship with Dr. David Kruger is that feeling that like, oh my gosh, this is fate, is really familiarity.
Yes.
And that part of the brain wants you to do this because you've done it and you're still alive. So it's not about whether it's good or bad, it's about alive or dead. Does that make sense? That's pretty clear, right?
Yeah, very fundamental.
There's much more to it, but it, in layman's terms, that's really what happens. And so we have to work really, really, really hard to create new belief systems that are for the miraculous. And really miracles are, what are they? They're things that you want. If you believe it, you can create it, but you got to believe it first. And so you have to do that deep digging about what are your belief systems and what wound is it attached to, and what self-belief do you have about yourself?
Yeah. And those are the things that are really hard to break open and look at.
Yeah.
Because some of that's not so pretty and we don't necessarily want to deal with it, but while we have the time and the quiet,
yes,
that purification time, that we were talking about. And so, I hope people can look at that as an opportunity to work through some of the things that you keep attracting, the things that
and if anybody can, you can. Yeah. If I can, anybody can.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's really what I tell people. Look, there's a science to this. There's an art and a science to this, and it's all possible. There is a quantum field of possibility for your life. And the shamans, one thing I've learned through shamanism is, especially Western societies, like indigenous people and traditional cultures know this, that sometimes, it's okay to experience the grief. It's okay to let the sadness come up. It's all right to say you're afraid and allow those emotions, because otherwise we're repressing. That becomes a stagnant wound, and we're just attracting it back to ourselves anyways, because the attraction is what you're vibrating to, right? And so as you're attracting it back to yourself, it's a beautiful opportunity to say, oh, look what I'm so powerful. Look what I created. Oh, great.
Yeah.
Okay, I have now an opportunity to heal something in myself, which is the name of the game.
And that's all part of the mindset that we want to shift.
Yeah, absolutely. And really to believe, I tell people when people are really, really low, I said, just that glimmer of hope that you can have the life you want. It's everything.
And you can. And you can.
Yeah. You just don't know how yet.
Right.
That's all there is to it.
Yeah, and that's where it's finding a coach, finding a mentor, finding someone who's already doing it. They say if you want to be famous, find a famous person you want to emulate and replace them, right? That's why, because you can see the path then, and add your own twist, but at least it gives you a path, and that's part of it. So I think mentoring and finding a coach or finding an advisor, such as yourself, it's huge for people to do. Yeah.
Oh, I love my mentors. They're like my favorite people. I'm like, can you come for Christmas morning? I'm like, come to my house on Christmas Eve. I totally love the mentors in my life, because we can't always see the forest through the trees in our own life. But someone else can.
Yeah.
And
having that honesty, having that person speak it to you in kindness, obviously, but if they're seeing it, there's something to it.
And here's the thing, see, I don't have a judgment of you, right? Or of
Right.
anybody. So when you're working with a mentor, they can see the diamond inside you. And they don't have the belief systems that you may have. Oh, I'm not good enough.
Oh,
Oh, I'm not pretty enough. Oh, I'm not smart enough. Oh, I'm not educated enough. Oh, I'm not thin enough. Oh, I'm not this enough or that enough. I'm not enough.
right.
They don't see that. All they see is a miracle in a body and a world of possibility.
And that's, it's funny because a lot of my clients, one of the biggest things they'll say is when you walk in the door, many organizing clients will say, please don't judge me. Of course, I'm the least judgmental person you'll ever meet. I'm not going to judge that. I'm here to get you from this point to this point. I'm not here to judge where you are in your process.
Yeah.
You know, but people don't understand that. And it's like a huge barrier to even having someone come into it with you. But don't see that as a barrier, people.
Yeah.
Like seriously, it's not. Those of us who are in these professions.
Because they're disorganized. I mean,
Yeah.
my gosh, Albert Einstein, they said he was a pig pen. Right? Does that make him less of anything? Because
No.
he just didn't have his brain just didn't work that way.
Well, in the course of history, do people even care?
Yeah.
No. You know,
We need to fly you out because my husband's a bit of a what is it, a pack rat. Oh, yeah. I'm like, why do you have these papers from 10 years ago? I mean, like, seriously, we're on a massive clean out ourselves. Another thing we can do during lockdown, clean the toilets.
Yeah, well, clutter is a huge barrier to having the success you want. And I tell that to my busy, smart people all the time. That's why I call my clients my busy, smart people.
Yeah.
They're busy because they're not doing it the most productive way necessarily. And they're super smart, but they need to see a path. And so we have to clear it first. You know, you got to get all the junk out of the way.
When can you get here? No, I'm just
Right. I know. I hear that a lot. So I want to bring this around to a little bit because I know we're gonna run out of time here, but I want to talk a little bit about your special projects that you do in Mozambique, because you have the Mom's House for Children. And one of the things I find just personally that if I and in my life too in the past where I've been in the dumps about something, is if I can throw myself into helping others, it really does pull you out of the depths of it. You know, and I know in this area, a lot of the people that have been volunteering to deliver food and meals and all that, like that's what saved them, their sanity, right? In this whole thing. But I want to hear a little bit about Mom's House for Children and a little bit about, you know, about that work that you're doing, just so people can learn a little bit about that.
Yeah, so this, like I said to you, since I was 8, I knew that I would be in Africa. I knew I would be helping orphans. And in 2004, but life happened, you know, I was 8 years old, but I made a vow.
Yeah.
You know, when you're a child and you make a vow, sometimes for good, sometimes not for good, that it sticks with you. It becomes really ingrained in you. So I knew at some point I would do something. In 2004, I had the great opportunity of traveling in Africa and staying there for a little while. And I just fell in love with the land in this South Africa. And I made a promise again. I said, I'll be back. And when I come back, I'm going to help the kids. And so 2.5 years ago, being in the field that I am, I still would go to events and learn from other teachers and workshops and things as a participant, because I lead them as well. But I also continued with my own personal development. And every single time, every single teacher, workshop leader, whatever, at the end, they're like, what's your biggest, deepest dream? And I have lots of them, you know, I want to be a New York Times bestselling author, blah, blah, blah. But this is my soul's dream, is to help the children first in Africa. And so I said, well, what am I waiting for? You know, I'm an empty nester now, newly remarried, and I decided to start the process. And right then, I got sicker with the autoimmune disease, so I started traveling to the Amazon jungle to work with the shamans because it's incurable, according to Western doctors. And so I've been down there 6 times in 2 years, and I'm very close to the people down there now. And so it has spread from South Africa. We're now in 2 nations, 2 continents. So we're in the Amazon as well. And I couldn't say no to these people because they treat me like I'm their mother. They live next to the lodge where I go. And so right now we have a lot of construction things and infrastructure things we'll be doing, but we started raising money for COVID because the food supply came to a screeching halt in the Amazon. And in South Africa, these children rely on school lunches. Nelson Mandela mandated that forever a South African child will have breakfast at school. And so they get a breakfast at school. The facilities that we're building is a childcare facility that they can go to after school. They get out of school early, like at 1:30. And then they have their evening meal and a place to do their homework, running water, because they don't have running water in their homes. So we have to drill for the water and all of that. But we're really looking forward to being able to get back there and start the actual construction on our first childcare facility. We already have it slated. We have 21 more to build right away. Then we're moving into Mozambique. But we have a lot of work we're doing, and right now, like I said, we've provided tens of thousands of meals. We've been feeding the kids since February, and so right now that became our most important need. Yeah, is feeding the kids, and so we're moving quickly though into infrastructure and in the Amazon, bringing clean water. They've got tons of water in the Amazon, but they're drinking it out of the river.
Yeah.
So
purification
we
process.
we just have to do it. I mean, it's like, this is my life. This is my life now. And so what's beautiful is many people are saying, I want to help. You know, look for the helpers, as Mr. Rogers said. And there's lots of us. There's lots of helpers. I'm like blown away how many people are helping.
Yeah.
Align yourself with helpers.
Yeah.
Become a helper.
Exactly.
It does change you, because it takes you out of your own worry. It takes you out of your own fear. It takes you out of your own need. It takes you out of the self, constant self-looking in your own life, and that obsession sometimes, right, over what your life is like right now. I promise you, for most of us that are watching this, we have it so much better than 3/4 of the rest of the world.
Oh yeah.
So it's going to take all of us, you know, to much is given, much is required. Not that we haven't worked hard for what we have, but to give back in some way, in any way that your heart leads you to do, will heal you in ways you never even dreamt of.
Well, that is super exciting. And I know on your website, there'll be information if people want to reach out with regard to the charities. And then in addition, beneath this video, audience, there is going to be a link to Your Life by Design, and it's a 7-week course, audio course with the workbook, I guess. Teresa, can you tell me a little bit about the course?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, it's 7. It's going to be me talking, so hopefully you won't get tired of that. Each class, I believe, is 45 minutes to an hour, and there's exercises to do. There's extra meditations in there. One that is really powerful came from Dr. David Kruger, one of my great mentors, who is a psychoanalyst, neuroscientist, and literally is listed as one of the, I think he's in the top 50 of the world's most influential mental health professionals of all time. And somehow he mentored me. Good Lord. I mean, I don't even know how that happened. But anyways, he's a wonderful friend of mine. He's on my board of directors as well. But there's an exercise in there to help you create new neural pathways so that you can have the belief system of the thing that you want to experience in your life, because you have to have it first in order for it to show evidence. And this course is going to take you on a journey through to that place of where you understand how magnificent you are and how powerful you are, and that really you can have the life you desire.
Thank you so much for offering that out to our audience, and they'll definitely, I'm sure, take advantage of that. And I just want to remind everyone, I want to thank you for being with us today, Theresa. This has been awesome. I'm sure everybody has enjoyed it, and please click the link to check out the course, or also her website in addition, if you're interested in finding out more. And also you can connect with her there if you want individual coaching or anything of that nature. So also continue to tune in to this wonderful event. It's 21 days, so there's still more to come. More audience, or more guests going to talk to our audience about how to thrive through life changes. And so we'll look for you in the coming days. And thanks for joining us. Thanks, Theresa.
Thank you so much for having me.